I've been breaking one of my own workshop rules for 20 years. Hang on, I'll tell you what I mean. I made this portable router table when I bought my first router. It was supposed to be temporary until I had more space and the time to build a proper router table. I have a rule. If something in the workshop slows me down or doesn't produce reliable results, I stop whatever I'm doing and I find a way to improve that process. But it's been over 20 years and I still use this old router table every day. It doesn't have dust collection and the clamps that hold it in place get in my way. But it does work well enough that I've been able to build hundreds of guitars with it. And I never got around to building that proper router table. Until now. I built this workbench about 20, maybe 25 years ago. I made it out of material that I reclaimed when I tore down the deck on the back of an old house I owned. It could use a new top, and I need to work on some leveling feet, but today we need to work on mounting the new router table. I'm planning a French cleat system across here. The idea is that it will drop in place here and be level with the top of the table, so the router table will effectively extend out onto the bench top. I can even imagine in the future building other options that hang from the cleat for a vise or a sander or some other things, but for now let's just work on the router table. I don't normally build extra fancy shop cabinets, but I had some walnut veneer plywood left over from some cabinets I made a few years ago, and this seemed like a good time to use it up. I decided to use a sheet of dry erase whiteboard as the top because it's nice and slippery. I made a template for the router lift on my CNC. I could have just cut the actual opening on the CNC, but sometimes it's quicker to do things by hand when you're making only one of something. This is my favorite double-sided tape. I made a video explaining why it's also the best double-sided tape for guitar building that I've ever used. I'll leave a link in the video description if you want to pick some up for yourself. I tried to build this project mostly out of leftover materials and hardware that I dug out of my storage bins. I did have to buy a few things though, including this really slick Kregg Router Lift kit. I used up all my walnut plywood scraps and had to buy a small sheet of 3/4 inch birch ply. drilling for pocket screws to hold the top on because I don't want screw heads on the tabletop. There's no need for pocket screws on the rest of the box. Plain old butt joints will be plenty strong. Just remember to pre-drill first. I use this water-based poly for sealing all my shop projects. Apparently I haven't used it for quite a while, judging by the look of this can. The whiteboard top won't allow any moisture through, but I sealed all the other surfaces to keep the top from warping. These garden gate hinges are massive overkill for a tiny little door like this, but I found them in my storage bin, so it saved me some money, but more importantly, it saved me a trip to the hardware store. My old portable router table didn't have an enclosed box, so in addition to keeping the sound quieter, I'm looking forward to finally having dust collection. Now that I've confirmed where I want the dust port, I'll disassemble the box, cut the hole for the dust port, then put the whole thing back together, this time with glue. I had some French cleats left over from another shop project, so I just need to cut them to length. I'm sanding the sharp edge off of all of the cleats so they'll wedge together more securely. So now that it's able to hang on the bench and these stop blocks prevent it from moving side to side, I wanted a way to be able to push it in or out so that the surface of the router table is in the same plane as the surface of the workbench. So what I did is I drove in a couple of screws on either end and left them proud a little bit. And I hung the table on here just to see where those screws would make a mark on the legs. And then I took it off again and drove another screw in here all the way in flush. So now I can pull these screws in or out to adjust the tilt. You can look in there and see the screw doing its thing. It's crude, but it works. So I rounded this edge of the stop cleat and I rounded the corresponding ends of this cleat so that it makes it easy to drop it in place. A piece of 2x4 wedged in place locks the whole cabinet to the bench rock solid. Kregg has these optional leveling feet to make adjusting the height of the router lift a breeze. Each of the leveling feet has 2 grub screws, so you can move the router lift up or down until it's level with your tabletop. Once it's level, you lock the router lift in place with a bolt in each corner. I had this 4-inch dust port in yet another storage bin, and I suspect by now you've figured out that I never throw anything away if there's any chance I can reuse it. Knobs and handles from old furniture are super useful for making jigs and fixtures around the shop. I think I stripped this knob off an old dresser. When you add dust collection to a closed box, you need to add some air intake holes so you don't create a vacuum. That would be bad for the router and your dust collector. The total area of the air intake holes has to be roughly equal to the size of the dust port hole. I made them a little less since there's already a hole for the power cord and the door doesn't close 100% airtight. It would have been much easier to drill these holes ahead of time on the drill press, but I wasn't sure how much the hole for the power cord and the leaky door would play into the equation, so I wanted to test it as I drilled the holes. Oh yeah, there's one more thing that I found in those storage bins while scrounging for this project. My 1991 McDonald's Batmobile. I wonder where that went.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger. Ready to move out.